Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the program. This is Football Classic. My name is Friday Enojo Adiku. On today's edition of the program, I'm going to take a look at the Liberian National Team, better known as the Lone Stars. I have Nike Kinam with me in the studio to also take a look at the Liberian National Team. Nike, good to have you on the show.
Pleasure is mine, Friday.
And ever-blazing George Gift is also here.
It's always a pleasure to be on the program. Thank you.
Yeah, Nike, let me start with you.
Yeah.
Liberia. Well, people will say Liberia.
Well, same reaction I would say too, because really there's not much to say about Liberia as far as I'm concerned, at the risk of sounding.
But they're a footballing nation.
You know, they are a footballing nation, and I agree totally with the fact that they're a good footballing nation. They may not have been very lucky in footballing history, world footballing history, but if we consider the fact that sometimes when you think that a certain team is not particularly good, and then they shatter your dreams of making.
Because there was a time, they were like a thorn in the flesh of Nigerian national team, the Super Eagles.
Yeah.
George, Liberia is not known, so to say, in the footballing, fraternity, but they've produced great player that Africa, till date, still adores him. George Weah.
Actually, yeah, they've produced a very great player, the only African player in the history of football to actually win the FIFA World Player of the Year in 1995 with AC Milan when he won the UEFA Champions League, playing in top quality teams like
not only FIFA. Well,
also won the European Player of the Year,
and the African Footballer of the Year.
Exactly. So that's
great achievement.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think no African player has actually gotten that achievement. But one thing you talk about George Weah and the Liberian team, he's a great motivator. He's just not a player in the team.
Also a financier.
Exactly.
Point.
I said I was coming to that. He finances the team. He motivates them. He inspires them. And he also got into politics. He tried to be the president of the country because he believes he has a lot to contribute to the development of the game. So they see him as a role model. They can inspire the young ones, inspire the team. Buys the jersey sometimes, take them on training tours. I think that's a great contribution he has done to the development of football in Liberia and Africa as a whole. You can imagine when he even came to play against Nigeria right there in Port Harcourt. One of the
Lisa was kicking from left, right, and center.
One of the qualifiers. But I think the part I really appreciated was that the Nigerian fans were actually applauding him because it was a big opportunity for them to see one of the great sons of Africa, that has been blazing the trade, that's been motivating, that's been, simply an exceptional player from the African continent.
Nike, they said a tree cannot make a forest.
Exactly.
But George Weah did actually, make a forest.
I was just going to go to that. When you see the fact that George Weah has made name for himself in the world of football, within and outside of Liberia, when you consider, like George said, his history, the only African player ever on the face of planet Earth,
maybe
so far
the only
to
African
get
player that
FIFA World Player. You never can tell. I'm an optimist, so you never can tell that there may not be some other African player. But when you consider how George Weah, the background of George Weah, and what he's been able to do with his life, he is particularly one that was with a difference, and with a difference. If you know that one is a nationalist, one who loves his country dearly, outside of the game of football, George Weah flies the logo of Liberia anywhere. He wanted to be a part of politics, even though he didn't have some people say educational qualification that you would expect, and he wasn't particularly a politician. He's such a humanitarian. He's given so much to his people outside of Liberia and within Liberia. So coming back home, even when he missed the first attempt to become the president, he still ran a vice presidential race with Tomba. When you see what kind of person George Weah is, one tree doesn't make a forest. Because he was one player who in his own wish, I know that personally would want to impact in the national team and then bring them forth. They've never been at any World Cup final. With George Weah being one of the best in the world so far, they've never been able to make it.
But during his time, they were able to create offsets.
Yes, because like you said, one tree doesn't make a forest. He was a star. He is a star.
And he actually did, put some players on the map.
Yes.
If you remember, George Weah opened doors to a lot of Liberian players.
Yes, and even encouraged other players to go forth. Because if you've seen his journey, you know, in the world of football, how he moved from France, you know, all the way to England. Even when he came to Chelsea, you see what George Weah has been able to do in the world of football. You know that this man was one with a difference. Even though he's not been able to bring it back home, all of the success to the national team, he's tried severally. He's given so much to that game. It's just
well, Friday, I think one major point for George Weah playing for the national team, I think the major challenge was that there was too much burden on him, you know. Yeah. Too much weight of the team to carry. So most of the times he plays from the midfield. You understand? He plays as a top striker. He plays in the midfield.
As
so
a defender.
Exactly. So yeah, at the moment, and you see a lot of defenders trying to mark him out of the game because they know his potential. They know the quality that he possesses. Yeah. So it's quite very, very challenging for George Weah because the defenders are already watching out for him, and so much is so expected of him. You know, so he still comes back for the midfield to deliver the balls to the striker. So I don't know if you really can't say what position George Weah plays for the Liberian national team because
you know that
he's a top striker, but in the Liberian national team he just plays everywhere.
You know, I think what contributes to the failure, so to speak, of Liberia in the world of football is that you don't underestimate the fact that this is a troubled nation.
Yeah.
They've gone through a lot politically, which is why, you know, he knows that affected. He wanted to give back to the society. They've been through a lot. Through the days of, you know, Charles Taylor, and then before Charles Taylor, when he took over from Do, we know what, yes, this man did to Liberia, and most Liberians, you know, I remember years back in the 90s when they were brought to Nigeria, you laugh, if you claim you're a Nigerian, you have to sing the national anthem before you board the ship to Nigeria or you take the C-130 to Nigeria. It shows that these people have gone through a lot. So if they've not been able to come forth to bring so much to football, I don't think that we should blame them so much.
George,
you understand?
Yeah. What will you attribute George Weah's success to after playing for almost all the top clubs in Europe? Yeah. Just name them.
I'll say hard work. I'll say hard work is very, very hard working. It's very, very obvious. It's very, very hard working. To climb the ladder, to climb the ladder of progression. You know, you started from a minimal country in football, and to the top level, you need to have hard work. Definitely, you need to stay disciplined. And you say he's committed and he's passionate. You understand? You look at his country and you say, okay, like Shirai pointed out, a war-torn country, but he's still there. You know, a lot of other players would have said, okay, I'm not going to play for this national team because I feel they don't have what it takes to go far. You understand? He's a top European player, World FIFA Player of the Year, but he still came back to contribute his own quota to the Liberian national team. You know, trying to bring the home-based players, trying to bring the local-based players. You know, he humbles himself too. He doesn't just feel like because he's paying their dues, you know, because it's flying them, so he feels like he's, you know, just going to control them or tell the coach what to do. I think he's a very humble player. It's very obvious he's humble and he's very, very consistent. You understand? You could see his progression from, you know, Marseille, Chelsea, and AC Milan. So I think the most important thing, guys, because he's humble.
To access Arsene Wenger too, you know, from the days of
exactly,
you know, reversed the mantle greatly when he was
in Monaco.
Yes, in Monaco. So when you see that the likes of Arsene Wenger, you know, brought him up, you don't expect anything less. Even though, like George rightly said, you know, this is a man who's committed to the game. Yeah. But I think particularly his talent stood him out, because when God gives you a gift, it gives you the room to stand out. That
but
gift
Nick, you must not forget that talent without discipline is nothing.
I agree with you. Talent without discipline, but
it won't take you anywhere.
You can't buy talent.
You should have the talent.
With discipline, you can acquire. But with talent, yes, I think it was a talent.
We should allow our viewers to see the man called George Oponwe. Yeah. George Oponwe of Liberia. We'll be right back.
We've got such sense, and John Weah with a header.
He was an idol on the pitch, brilliant and inspirational. Off the field, he's treated like royalty, forever humble despite the adoration of a war-torn nation. He was known early in his career by his African name, Opong, but by the end of it, his countrymen knew him as King George. George Weah is the greatest player to come from his native Liberia. George Weah was born in Monrovia, Liberia in 1966 and was raised by his grandmother. He spent his youth playing football barefoot on the streets. By the age of 15, Weah's footballing talents were obvious. He rose quickly through the ranks of Liberian football before moving on to Cameroon with Tonnerre de Yaoundé, his first major contract. It was at Tonnerre that Weah caught the eye of Cameroon national coach Claude Leroy, who in turn contacted Arsène Wenger, then manager of AS Monaco. Wenger flew down and signed Weah, who had just won his first African Player of the Year award in 1989. Weah spent 4 successful seasons at Monaco, winning the French Cup in 1991. George says Wenger made him into the great footballer that he became, helping him adjust to European life and football while respecting his African past. In 1992, Weah moved to Paris Saint-Germain, and his meteoric rise continued. His 14 goals led PSG to a French Cup triumph in 1993. A French League Championship followed, and then a third French Cup win in 1995, his second with PSG. Weah's status as one of the world's elite footballers was confirmed when he was named African Player of the Year for the second time in 1994. A transfer to Italian giant AC Milan came in May 1995, and Weah set himself for the challenge of conquering the world's best. Just a few weeks later, his grandmother died. In her memory, Weah pushed his game to yet another level. Seemingly impossible passes, breathtaking runs and spectacular goals became common features of George Weah's game. Weah was awarded the Ballon d'Or for the European Player of the Year for 1995, eligible because he played in Europe. Also added his third African Player of the Year award, and to top off a fantastic year, he was named FIFA World Player of the Year for 1995, becoming the first footballer to win the World, European and African awards in the same year. Despite his honours on the field, Weah was distracted by the deteriorating situation in Liberia, mired in civil war since 1990. Early in 1996, with the newly crowned World Player of the Year at the peak of his powers on the pitch, the violence in his homeland was worsening. At a time when Weah was sidelined with a broken hand, the situation at home got so bad that he was unable to contact his mother, relying on television for updates. In 1997, George Weah visited his homeland for the first time since the assault on his family and friends. Fiercely patriotic, Weah was determined to further the development of football in Liberia. Simply put, George Weah was Liberian football. Not only was Weah the star player, but the coach, technical director and major sponsor of the Lone Star. He even organised for his Italian sponsor to provide uniforms for the Liberian team. And he knew where the Lone Star would be without him.
But all the games that Liberia ever played, I never missed one game. Because if I don't go, there's no team.
But Weah's return had another purpose. In his role as an ambassador for UNICEF, Weah encouraged the children of Liberia to put the civil war behind them. In Italy, Weah's career with AC Milan was coming to a close. Knee troubles were limiting his effectiveness, and he found himself playing less and less. In 2000, Weah was loaned to English Premier League team Chelsea for the rest of the season, joining the ride as Chelsea marched to victory in the FA Cup. He returned to AC Milan after the season, but soon enough Weah was back in England, joining Manchester City on a free transfer. However, Weah was now in the twilight of his career, and poor form cost him his place in the side. Just 7 games into his career at Main Road, Weah was released on a free transfer and returned to France with Olympique de Marseille. Weah said he joined Marseille so that he could play for the pleasure, but nevertheless he expected results from himself.
The guys here are expecting many things from me. I have to work hard and do everything I can to give them what they want.
After less than a year with Marseille, Weah again found himself needing a new home, but at least his form wasn't the concern. Marseille was struggling financially, and Weah's contract had expired. Talk of returning to the English Premier League to join Liverpool never came to fruition, and it appeared that Weah would be forced into retirement. However, George was still enjoying a run of good form, motivated by his burning desire to play for Liberia in the World Cup finals. Weir almost single-handedly led the Lone Star to the top of its qualifying group, and it seemed Weir's final dream was going to come true. But a shock 2-1 loss to Ghana at home effectively handed the final qualifying place to Nigeria. Weir was gutted after the loss, and his pain was compounded by a harsh criticism of his own performance. He quit the national team, saying he would start a new life in the United States. Later that year, Weir would be enticed to join Al Jazeera in the United Arab Emirates. He also would rejoin the Lone Star for the 2002 African Cup of Nations, but a disappointing tournament saw him again retire from international football, this time for good. In an emotional tribute to the Liberian legend, the world was given the opportunity to farewell George Weir with a testimonial match in his honour. Staged in Marseille, past and present stars of the football world, including Zinedine Zidane, Zvonimir Boban and Samuel Eto'o, turned out to pay their respects. Despite his football career being over, there was still a political passion that burned within George Weir. And in November 2004, he announced his intention to stand in the 2005 Liberian presidential election. A hero's welcome upon his arrival in Monrovia, Weir was widely considered the favourite to take office. By October 2005, his aspirations to become Liberian president were on track, when in the initial ballot he won the most votes. However, unfortunately, he did not secure the required overall majority. Weir disputed the electoral process, but on the 21st of December 2005, he dropped his legal challenge and his presidential campaign. Weir's influence on world football is unquestioned. He was named African Player of the Century in 1998, and in 2004 was included in FIFA's list of the greatest football players of all time. As a boy, George Weir dreamed of becoming the next Pelé. Today, Liberian children and youngsters all over the world dream of becoming the next George Weir. But King George was not the next Pelé. He was the first George Weir, and to those that saw him play, there will never be another.
Oh, George Weir deserves every single accolade, every single credit.
Welcome back. George Oponwe of Liberia there. There are Liberians in Nigeria, they say Liberia. So Nike, Liberia, are they finding their bearing after the departure of George Oponwe from the Liberian National Team?
No, I would say that it's going to be pretty hard. But like any other country that survived the war, it will take them time. They love football. You know that Liberians love football.
Okay, they are not the only one that have gone through the political crisis in Africa. Yeah. Sudan is one nation that they are the founding father of African Football Nations Cup. But after all the trouble and the rest of them, Sudan is there now trying to claim their position. What is wrong with Liberia? Let me come to George. Okay.
Well, at the moment, what is wrong with Liberia? I think there's only one reason Liberia is not going to be at the next Nations Cup, because Nigeria beats them. What else am I going to say? I mean, Liberia, they've been to the Nations Cup twice. They lost out in the first round. Not too good, not too impressive. You understand? You could say, but they thought they had a chance now to go to the next Nations Cup in South Africa. They played the Super Eagles of Nigeria, a draw right there in Monrovia, and came back to Calabar, hoping that they could spring up surprises. They had only one exceptional player in the team, Seko Lise. He actually learned a trade right here in Nigeria, with some local players, and he's got to play out of the country now. I think he plays in Russia, so he has a lot of experience. But I think the Super Eagles had too much quality, too much experience, too much talent.
You are talking about Super Eagles having too much talent, too much quality.
For them, you understand?
Against
the lone stars of
exactly. And I tell you, I don't know if their name is working against them too. They call them lone stars. They only just have one top quality player all the time.
But that's going to their
the lone star. If you look up in the sky in the night, you see a particular star that is shining brighter than the rest of the stars. That is where they derive their name from.
It's just an irony that every time they just have only one star, and like she already pointed out, a tree cannot make a forest. So they just that's why they score only one goal against Nigeria.
Like when George Weah was there, you actually make impact. Great
Exactly,
impact.
but still a lone star
For a country to go through series of war problem and the rest of them, no football pitch, no association on ground. The players themselves were carrying guns. Then suddenly someone came from nowhere and said, "Drop your gun and play the round leather game." Do you think it will take them another century or decade of rehabilitation, reorientation for them to get back to the proper scene of football?
One thing I want you to realize lately is that football is not just like we used to have it. The game of football keeps evolving, and if you don't flow with the trend of things, you probably won't make it up. Yes, which is why some people say that we have the challenges we have in our country right now. So
your national team here?
Yes, that's partly what is responsible. If you don't follow the trend, you're most likely tend to drop by the way. So I think that it may take some time for Liberia
to get back to the scene.
The love of football will always bring talented ones out. I believe with time.
George, your final thought on the Liberian national team?
I think the one thing they need to get right is I think they need to develop a platform where most of their players can play out of Liberia, so they can have a chance to develop quality football. Whatever means they can do that. I mean, sometimes they get a lot of scouts coming to Africa, to watch some grassroots football tournament and see what they can offer. You understand? You could talk about George Weah, you could talk about Seko Lise at the moment is playing for the Liberian national team. It's because they're playing their trade in Europe. You understand? It gives them a wider perspective, gives them a wider advantage, because in terms of their earnings, if George Weah didn't have the money, he couldn't have supported the team. Fine. So I think if they can have chances of their players going out of the country, if they can organize a grassroots football competition, they can get scouts, they can get academies. If they can liaise with European academies, they can come and see their players. Somehow market them, sell them. Make some money, develop their football. Develop their facilities. I think they have the chance. They have the quality. Africans are always talented, skillful people. So I think they need to develop on what they have at the moment. They try their very best. For them to even compete against a team like Nigeria, to tell you that the talent is there, the development is there. You understand? The raw materials are there, but the administrative people need to get a lot of marketing. They need to get a lot of academies liaising with them so that they can send these players out of the country. When these players play out of the country, they get experience to help the team and motivate the younger ones and give them a chance of qualifying for maybe next Nations Cup.
All right, Nike. George Opanwe of Liberia. He came, he saw a conquer, but he never been to the World Cup, FIFA Senior World Cup. But we must not take it away from him. Great player.
Fantastic player.
Are we going to produce, or rather, is Liberia going to ever produce a player in the mold of George Opanwe? And if yes, how and when?
Also, if the terrain changes, we've seen Salif, the president, try her best, to bring the nation up now. It's been a nation that's been in shambles, and it may not happen so soon. But like the optimist that I am, I don't look down on any nation, and I don't look down particularly on my nation.
Your own nation.
So I know that it's very possible that they would get to that level. That yes, nobody thought that George Weah would ever spring up, and if the likes of George Weah would, and then there may be some more.
If you look at his history, started playing, on the street
like
of
most
Monrovia,
African players,
and
like most
he rose
African
to
players.
stardom.
Yes,
with determination
all the way.
and discipline and dedication.
So we are hoping that yes, they would have. It may not take a decade, but it may take more than a decade, but they would get there.
All right.